All issues discussed on the following podcast are specifically relevant to Memphis and unincorporated Shelby County, including Arlington, Germantown, Lakeland, and Millington. Other jurisdictions, including Bartlett and Collierville, may have policies and procedures which differ from those discussed here. Check with your local building department to determine their requirements. Now, please join us for the Building Beat. Welcome to this special episode of Building Beat. I'm your guest host, Ron Bethea, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited to bring you an insightful conversation with our current Chief Electrical Inspector, Bo Cates. Bo is a seasoned professional with over 25 years of experience in the field of electrical inspection. Bo has dedicated his career to ensuring safety and compliance. Now serving as the Chief Electrical Inspector, Bo leads our department with a wealth of knowledge and a commitment to upholding the highest standards in building safety. Thrilled to have him on the show, share his expertise and insights with us on the ins and outs of electrical inspections. So welcome to the show, Bo, and tell us a little about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me here. My name is Bo Cates. I've been with Shelby County now for about 26 years. I've been in the electrical trade now for about 40. But as far as code enforcement, I've been there about 26 years. I started out as the electrical plans examiner for the first year, and then I moved on to outside field inspector. I did that for about 20 years, and then for the last 5, I've been in management. And hopefully today we can give the public some general knowledge and insight as far as how code enforcement operates as far as electrical permits and inspections.
Well, thanks for being here. And, I'd like to share with everybody that might not know that, mine and Bo's careers have really shared a parallel path. My first day at code enforcement it's construction enforcement now in July of 1999, Bo was serving as the electrical plans examiner.
That's right.
And he showed me the ropes of the workstation and all that. And so I did electrical plan review for, about 14 years. And then took the position that Bo currently holds now as Chief Electrical Inspector. And Bo was a senior for me. And I have since been promoted to administrator. And as Bo said, Chief Electrical Inspector, he's thousands of inspections, and he's an expert in the field. So I'm excited to get started. So, Bo, let's start with the basics. Listeners who might not be familiar, can you explain what an electrical inspection is and why it's so important?
Yeah, electrical inspection, what we do is for is a general view of the electrical system in a building, to make sure it meets all requirements and safety standards. For checking the wiring, for the panel board, outlets, fixtures, grounding. Primary goal is for prevent electrical hazards, safety. Main thing we do is safety as far as installation on electrical.
So when do you need an electrical inspection?
Well, electrical inspection and permits, or anytime you do any kind of electrical installation, as far as a new house, repairs, alterations, anything that would require a new electrical installation, you require electrical inspection, which would require electrical permit. And we're going to get into as far as what all it takes to pull a permit, see if it meets code and inspections and all that. So we go forward, we will get into that.
Yeah, it sounds like they're a critical part of the project. So how do I go about getting an electrical inspection?
Well, first thing, before you do any kind of electrical work at your house, it all depends who you hire. So whoever you hire has to be a registered licensed contractor within Shelby County. The way you can find that out is whoever you hire, first thing you need to do is make sure, get their license number. Get their license number. You can call our office. It's electrical department at 901-222-8395. We have 2 supervisors that answer the phone, and you can give them the electrical contractor's license number. We can look it up for you to be able to tell if they are a registered licensed contractor and they are registered through Shelby County. Because that's what the first thing you have to have as far as making sure who you hire, that they can pull a permit.
So what kind of work requires an electrical permit?
Well, like I said before, any kind of installation on your house, repairs. Like I said, if you have a new game room upstairs, you want to wire it up, that requires any kind of electrical installation. You have an electrical contractor come do. Like if your service blows down in your house, everything requires electrical permit. And it's for the safety, and make sure we come out there and look at it, make sure it's installed according to code, and it's in safe installation.
So if I do the game room upstairs, do I just get one inspection? And how many inspections do I need?
Well, typically, if we do like a kitchen remodel or upstairs renovation, it would require 2. You'd have a rough-in inspection, and you could have a low voltage inspection too. They could be on the same permit. Sometimes the electrical contractor will pull the low voltage permit. And when we say low voltage, we're talking about surround sound, for his controls for your TV, anything that's low voltage will require a low voltage permit also. So you might have 2 inspections. You might have one electrical roughing for the high voltage, and you might have a low voltage inspection for the low voltage. And then you would only need a final inspection after that.
So what are you looking for on the rough end?
On the rough end, we are mainly looking at the installation. Rough end inspection happens before any of the sheetrock installations installed. We're looking for, as far as the installation of the electrical wiring, where it's bored through the holes, make sure it's secured. We're looking for the spacing on your receptacles, what code requires. We're looking for the branch circuit, as far as the size of the wire, where it's bored into the hole, make sure it's back and far, the stud's far enough for when the installation's installed, that the nails or screws wouldn't hit the electrical wiring. Make sure, as far as the branch circuit size, as far as if you have enough branch circuits for the square footage of the room. As far as make sure all your equipment grounds are made up, properly sized. And that basically covers your installation. The rough-in inspection to me was the most important thing, because you can see everything before it gets covered up. Once it's covered up, like I say, you can go back and test when it's energized and make sure your receptacle and polarity and stuff like that's hot and good and all the lights and stuff work. But to me, the most important inspection we do is the rough-in.
Yeah, so you're making sure that all the wiring methods are properly installed and they're not damaged, and when this material and equipment's rendered no longer accessible, it's hard to make changes, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's much easier to do it for the installation than the sheetrock's installed before, and then afterwards you find a problem.
So what do you do on the final inspection?
Well, we go, first of all, we'll go to the panel, make sure the panel's labeled as far as the branch circuits that you installed are labeled and listed for whatever room you might did. We'll go in there and test all the lights, receptacles, as far as your arc fault. If there's GFI receptacles, we'll have test, make sure all those corrected and hot. Basically, make sure everything's working in a functioning proper order.
So on the final, you're testing everything and making sure that functionally it's working correctly.
Correct.
So what's the risk if you don't get a permit or the inspections? What are the risks that you have there?
Well, to me, you're putting yourself liable out there when you don't hire an electrical contractor, because we're there for the homeowner. We're there for the homeowner to make sure they have a safe installation and the person that they hire knows what they're doing. Also, you get into liability when you go to sell your house or anything like that, as far as you have a room that's not shown that was wired up and your square footage has gotten greater. They'll go back and take a background look and see if any permits were pulled on that address. If there was not, red flags go up. Then you'll have to go back in there after the fact, if they call us out there and we see that some electrical work's been done without permits, then you have to go back in the fact and pull permits. It causes a big problem. But the biggest thing is pulling permits are for the homeowners, for safe installations.
Yeah, safety is really critical. You know, we've had a few instances recently where somebody's gone to sell their home and it's been discovered that a room was finished and it wasn't recorded at the assessor's office, and it ended up causing problems during the sale where the person has to go back and hire contractors to pull permits, and then if there wasn't a rough-in inspection, then the work could have been installed defectively, and it may require the removal of the sheetrock, and it can be really problematic. It's a lot easier to get the permits and inspections on the front end.
I can't emphasize more that the customer needs to verify that the contractor is a licensed contractor and registered in Shelby County, because I get countless of phone calls all the time. People call and said, he said he was an electrician and he said this and he was going to pull a permit. Come to find out he didn't. They didn't know they were supposed to get inspections or not. And come to find out they didn't pay him half his money. Jobs have done. They're trying to call him. He won't answer. Then they call us, we get involved, and then we have more bad news for them as far as saying, well, I hate to tell you this, but there never was a permit pulled, and this guy's license number is not on our list. And so it compounds the issue, and it comes back on the homeowner. They're just out that money. I mean, they're just, I tell them, well, they ask me what they have to do now, and I said, well, now they're going to have to hire a licensed electrical contractor to pull a permit. We try to work with them when they're in a situation like this, as far as not make them have to tear the sheetrock. If there's some way we can inspect it, tear a little bit of sheetrock off so we can see the wiring and stuff and make sure it's in safe and orderly and up to code matter, we'll work with them as much as we can. But it puts them in a bad spot. We're not finding out on the front end whether their contractor is a licensed registered through Shelby County and if they pull permits or not.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the final inspection and you mentioned payment. And, often we find that the final inspection was never obtained,
right,
that the permit was pulled and they got a rough-in inspection and it never called for the final.
Uh-huh.
It'd probably be a good idea not to pay the contractor the final payment until you get a final inspection.
Until you have a green tag. It says electrical final on it. Ask to see that before you make final payment. I've told many people that. But, some people are just vulnerable. They just, they don't know. They don't know. That's why I tell them to call our office. We can help them out, walk them through it, give them the steps to do, and it'd be beneficial to them.
Well, in my previous life in the private sector, there were two things that you always had to have to get final payment on a commercial project. You had to have a final inspection certificate and a lien waiver. If you didn't have those two documents, then you might as well go back to the office because you're not getting paid. Right. It's best the job is not complete until a final inspection is approved.
Exactly. And then, like I said, people don't know. Like, say, when the storm comes through and they'll get a permit to replace their service or something, and then we'll give them a temporary inspection, which will get their power back on, but then the contractor never calls back for a final, and then the permit ends up expiring, and then the homeowner has to go back and pull another permit. So they should always be in contact with their electrical contractor, and if they have any red flags, something don't smell right or whatever, just call us and we can help them out.
Let's talk a little bit about the safety aspects of not getting an inspection. You had mentioned that, or you often hear of fires being started by electrical systems. You hear it all the time. You talk a little bit about the fire hazards associated with improperly installed electrical work?
All right. Well, as far as the general fire hazards, most come from improperly installed electrical work. Okay, as far as loose connection, damaged wiring, can cause arcing in the material, overload your conductors, causes heat, which ignites material. As far as your, and odor homes, for example, as far as aluminum, used to wire in all these odor homes. As far as aluminum has, when you have overloaded, the wire heats up and it expands, and when it cools off, it extracts. And over time, it causes a loose connection, and when you put a load on it, a loose connection causes heat, which causes fires.
Yeah, there's three elements that you have to have a fire. You have to have ignition, you have to have a combustible material, and you have to have air, right? Those are the three things you need to have a fire. And the electrical system is often attributed to be the source of ignition for a fire. And that's what we aim to do. The electrical inspections is to make sure that the work is installed in accordance with codes and standards and cannot present a fire hazard due to overloaded conductors, loose connections, or arcs, or any other form of ignition. So what about, you said something about shock hazards. What kind of shock hazards are there?
Well, shock hazards typically arise from improper installing wiring and equipment, or from damage from lack of proper maintenance. Sometimes, as far as shock hazards, everybody thinks they can be electricians. A lot of people go to Home Depot and Lowe's and just say, I can replace that receptacle, I can replace that switch. Well, something simple as not properly grounding a receptacle can cause a shock hazard. As far as a piece of equipment, not properly grounded, you don't hook up your equipment ground, your equipment comes energized, you come in there in your bare feet, you touch it, that can cause a shock hazard. So properly installation of your electrical wiring usually prevents shock hazards. But when you have somebody that's not professionally trained or not know what they're doing, and they try to take on being as far as an electrical contractor yourself and wire it yourself, that's when usually problems happen.
Yeah, so qualified people understand the importance of grounding and bonding, and what you're saying is your average citizen may not be aware of the nuances of those protective methods.
Like I say, they they go on Facebook and look at it, or TikTok, and see how to wire a receptacle up, and they think they can do it, and 9 times out of 10 they don't.
Yeah, we had an interesting discussion the other day with a gentleman about this very subject, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Matter of fact, yes, we did.
But,
very interesting conversation we had.
You talk about qualified personnel. I used to teach an apprenticeship class, and I've taught many different years, but I think my favorite was third year. And in third year, to give you an idea of how intense this subject is, we had about 9 weeks of grounding and bonding in that apprenticeship program, because that's the primary focus of one of the quarters. And when I started that class, I would show 2 videos at the very first night of school. And one of them was a garage door installation in Kentucky that resulted in a child being electrocuted. And it was particularly sad and compelling because the homeowner pulled a permit for the garage, and the building inspector approved the installation, but there never was an electrical permit pulled. The person installing the work didn't have the appropriate cable type. It needed a 14-3 for a 3-way switch. Of course, that's getting in the weeds a little bit, but ultimately what happened is the equipment ground wasn't connected. And when he failed to connect the equipment ground, when the equipment failed, it energized the garage door. The child was out playing and came into contact with the door, and it resulted in a fatal electrocution. That highlights the importance of that connection to prevent non-current carrying metal parts from getting energized. And the failure of the installer to recognize the important role of that conductor ultimately led to fatal consequences. So the purpose of showing that video is to reinforce the importance of grounding and bonding, and qualified personnel understand that. They know the importance of it, and they know how significant it is. Another video I would show was the MGM Grand hotel fire. And, in our industry, we're often informed by tragedy. And in the MGM Grand fire, it was something as simple as a pie case. So there was a restaurant that had a pie case in it, and during the course of the evening, a fault developed in a piece of 1/2-inch flexible metal conduit, and it arced out on a plumbing tube, copper, and that ignited the surrounding material and resulted in a fire that ultimately killed 80 people. Now, we're talking about something that is just a matter of cents. We're not talking about any substantial amount of money here and a hundreds of millions of dollars hotel. And what was particularly interesting about that, and really ominous about that, on the other hand, is that we're talking about a modern high-rise building. This is not some old structure that was in disrepair. This was an improperly wired piece of equipment that resulted in the death of 80 people, the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars, and all simply due to somebody not understanding the importance of the safety measures that are required by the code. You may think that you have an understanding of electrical systems, but without significant training, it's unlikely that you do.
You said you taught school. How many years did you teach, and where? I
taught at Mid-South IEC. I taught first year, third year, fourth year, probably for about 10 years.
10?
About 10 years. Yeah, it was really rewarding. It's to see people learn and grow the trade and try to get qualified people doing the work. For a while there, construction work fell out of favor, and it was hard to get people interested in doing it. But understanding the fundamentals and the requirements of the code is how we achieve safety. And it's something we have to work at every day. And this is really an inexhaustible subject in my mind. Electrical is, I think my wife would disagree. I think she thinks it's pretty exhaustible, but I think it's an inexhaustible subject, and I've studied it my whole life and still study it today, even though I've kind of stepped out of that role now. But
was it a 4-year apprenticeship program?
That
was that what it was?
That's a 4-year apprenticeship program.
Because the biggest problem our industry has today is finding people that want to get in the electrical industry. I have contractors call me on a daily basis and says their main problem is finding workers. I hear it every single day, and they ask me all the time, and I'm just like, well, I get this conversation all the time as far as trying to find help that would qualify, want to go to school and pick up the trade.
Well, there's challenges, I think, across all sections of the industry now, not just electrical. It's all the trades.
True.
But I think that'll improve. I think that people are starting to recognize the importance.
Yeah, well, you hear more people going in the trade school because, as far as college and everything, how expensive it is. And you can work and go to school at the same time.
Yeah, there's a couple of different apprenticeship programs available in this area. There's Mid-South Independent Electrical Contractors. There's the National Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, which is IBEW. So they have a 5-year apprenticeship program, and anybody seeking to get into the trade should look at possibly getting into maybe a VOTEC and getting ready to go to an apprenticeship program. But it's really rewarding. You get paid while you learn, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing we didn't touch on that I think listeners might find interesting is some of the new technology that's available to protect consumers from electrocution hazards and fire hazards, like AFCIs, GFCIs.
Correct. And it's expanding.
Yeah, I think ground fault circuit interrupter protection was probably one of the more monumental technological advancements in electrical safety.
Or safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because it limits fault current to such a low level that it really it doesn't completely eliminate, but greatly mitigates electrocution hazard, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny, you hear people say all the time, they say, well, it's a nuisance tripping.
Yeah.
The old nuisance tripping. Yeah. And
if you're on the bad end of it, you like that nuisance tripping.
Well, I think it's a misnomer because if it was nuisance tripping, then that would mean it's not functioning as intended, right?
Correct. Exactly.
When it actually works like it's supposed to, that's not nuisance tripping.
That's right.
That's actually
life safety.
That's saving your life, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's saving your life.
Yes.
And arc fault circuit interrupters, although much newer than ground fault circuit interrupters, they really are intended to serve a different role, aren't they? They're there to provide fire protection, aren't they?
Correct.
Yeah, so we were talking about arcs and sparks,
Right,
and
you know,
things
like curtains
that.
hanging down. People understand as far as the curtains hanging down, you go plug something in, and it has that little arc. It plugs in like your vacuum cleaner, and that should trip it out, though. That's what the arc fault is all about.
Yeah,
and
so
you just have, instead of lighting the curtains, it'll trip out the circuit.
Yeah, right, and I don't know, people don't understand. That when you get a loose connection, like you were talking about receptacle, when aluminum wire, you get the expansion and contraction and all that, and you get the loose connection. I think what people don't understand is they think, well, that receptacle's not working. Well, I don't plug anything into that receptacle anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what they don't realize is that the receptacles are typically wired feed through. Right.
Correct.
So when you plug something in a receptacle downstream, it's pulling current through the receptacle upstream, right?
Absolutely.
And that current through a resistive connection is heat, and heat equals ignition and fire. So anytime you have abnormal operation of your electrical system, you need to get that checked out, don't you?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
But arc fault circuit interrupters provide protection from that happening. And that's why they're in the code. That's why they're important. But, there's other things in the code that are important as well, like smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. And all of those things are tested on the final inspection, aren't they?
All the smoke alarm test is tested. Smoke alarms, if one goes off, they all go off in the house. We test the GFIs. We test all the arc faults. Mainly what we do is we'll go into the electrical panel, trip all the arc faults and GFIs there if they're not arc fault devices, that is. Usually you see the breakers on new installations. On existing installations, you might more likely see the devices. We check that. We'll go in there, check the panel, make sure it's labeled correctly so a homeowner can go in there and know if it's tripped and what's tripped. You can go in there and look in there, say living room, bedroom receptacles, kitchen receptacles. As far as your AC units, make sure your AC is all connected. Make sure the manufacturing rating on there, as far as your maximum overcurrent device matches what's in the electrical panel. Just to make sure all your grounding is properly connected. Just do an overall view, final check as far as everything's working and installed according to code.
So the citizens, once they've gotten a final inspection from your office, they can be pretty comfortable in that they have the latest safety protections afforded by the national standards and codes.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So
that's where the whole, like I say, that's why pulling a permit and letting us come out there and do our inspection is so critical, which, like say a lot of people get work done at their house and they don't pull permits. And sometimes, might work fine, nothing ever happens. But if it does happen, then you got to go back and find out if it's a fire or anything, and they find it's electrical. Well, the insurance company's going to get involved and find out what caught fire. Was something new, like a new bedroom was added? Was there permits pulled? Was it inspected? Was it installed according to code? And when they find out there's no permits been pulled, it's considered work without permit. So then you get in for whether the insurance is going to pay for it or not. But pulling the permit is beneficial mainly for the customer.
So what happens if my air conditioner goes bad and I need to get my air conditioner replaced? Does that require an electrical permit?
Yes, it does. It requires an electrical permit, and there's two different ways. HVAC mechanical contractor, we've amended the code where they can pull the mechanical permit and they can pull the electrical permit.
So there's two permits.
Two permits. There's a mechanical and electrical. The electrical permit is only good from the disconnecting means to the unit itself. It's called the whip. It's called a air conditioned reconnect whip, and that's the only thing they're allowed to do. Now, if they have to have a new branch circuit ran out to the air conditioning unit, then an electrical contractor will be required to pull a permit, and he will have to do that installation part of it. But as far as if it's just a replaced unit and the existing disconnect outside the unit, and they just replace the whip only, the mechanical contractor is allowed to pull the mechanical and the electrical on that case right there.
Do these high efficiency condensing units that they're installing, when they swap those out, are they usually going to align with the existing circuit breaker that's in the panel?
More than likely not. More than likely not. And if you have to replace the breaker, then an electrical contractor is required to pull a permit to replace that breaker.
Yeah, and it could actually void the warranty
Absolutely
on
it
the
will.
condensing
Absolutely it
unit
will.
if they don't match,
Yes,
right?
sir, absolutely it will.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's good information, because I think a lot of people don't realize that this modern equipment has different ampere ratings and has different protection requirements that may not be met by their old circuit breaker. And a qualified installer understands that and makes whatever corrections are needed to properly protect that equipment.
And a lot of homeowners don't know if there's a mechanical permit and electrical permit that you're going to have two inspectors. Because they'll call our office and say, no, I had an inspector here yesterday. He approved it. And it's like, yeah, that was for the mechanical only. Now we're here to do the electrical part of it. Unless it's for the whip only.
Well, that's very good information. Well, I sure appreciate the work that you and your staff do to keep the citizens safe. And I appreciate you coming in today. It's very informative. And I know that you're out there making sure that we have the latest technological installations, that they're technologically sound and safe, and that's a good thing. So appreciate you being here today.
Well, one other thing before we need to go, I'd like to discuss as far as the new Develop 901 Citizen Portal we have online. If homeowners can go online, and if they have any questions themselves as far as they can find out if look up an address as far as they have a permit pulled or they don't. If they have concerned neighbors that something's going on at somebody's house and you'd like to know if there's permits been pulled, you can look online and find out, look up the address, you can punch in the address. It'll tell you all the permits that are issued at that house. And usually when there's not, that's how we usually find out there's either there's a dumpster in front of the house or find out there's no permits pulled from a neighbor. So that's available to the public. And if all else fails, you need any questions answered, you can call our office, like I said, 901-222-8395, and we'll be glad to help you out any way we can.
Well, that's good information, and I hope everybody got that. So if you see any illegal work going on, just give us a call.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Building Beat. Executive producers are Director John Zena and Deputy Director Nadia Logan Robinson. Associate producer is me, Brianna Miller. Special thanks to Ina Esco, artist in residence with the Memphis Library Foundation and the Memphis Public Libraries. The song featured in the show is Hush by the Mason Fair. This is a production of the Memphis and Shelby County Division of Planning and Development. To learn more about this podcast and our work, visit our website at develop901.com.